This episode of the production channel is sponsored by CLEMCO. Visit clemco.net for all of your freelance, independent contractor, entrepreneur, and small business needs.
Oh, David Grindle, USITT Executive Director. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Clem, how's it going, my friend?
Oh, man, it's been a week, it's been a month, but you know what? We have today, and I'm blessed to have today.
Here. We made it this far. Let's enjoy it.
USITT is not an organization that I knew about 2 years ago. And I don't know if a lot of people who are currently working in the industry have been privy to know about this organization that was founded in 1960. You all have some years.
We have, we have been around just a little while.
Yeah.
Sort of, in some respects hiding, and in other respects just waiting for our time to explode onto the screen for people. And I think we might be there coming out of the last, year and a half, almost 2 years that we've all suffered through.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were founded in 1960 by a group of designers and architects in New York City, who realized that they knew a lot of what was going on in theater. And you remember back in the 60s, that was the beginning of a huge theater building boom in America. And so they started wanting to know what each other were doing. You had all the theaters that were being built in the Reconstruction of Europe. And that led to the formation of this organization. And we've been growing and in existence, producing education, funding research, and now trying to be on the forefront of inclusion and diversity in the industry. USITT, United States Institute for Theater Technology. Mm-hmm. And some people get stuck on that theater word a little bit.
And that's where I was going next, David. That's what I love about our conversations. You flow.
Yeah, we get each other. We kind of flow together. That theater word, theater for us in that instance, to be a little bit of a nerd, because I'm actually a whole lot of a nerd. Theater in this instance is describing the technology. Mm-hmm. That's what we're about. We're about technology that's used to tell stories and create experiences. And that can be done in a traditional theater sense. But for some people, a sports arena is their greatest theater event. Mm-hmm. The hype that gets built around what's going on in an arena is driving the emotion of that attendee using theater technology. Mm-hmm. Just mm-hmm. the same as we're driving the emotion of an attendee at a traditional play in a traditional theater. We embrace people who work in community theater, who work in theme parks, on cruise ships, in Las Vegas, you name it, because what we discover is there's a bond and a commonality between those folks who are using that technology to tell a story to or for someone.
My introduction was through the Digital Media Commission. I feel like there's other aspects where there are like wardrobe or other different things that wouldn't necessarily go in someone's mind under the technology bucket.
Well, that's because in our world, we think of technologies as wires and electricity. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, technology has been in existence for the existence of humanity. Mm-hmm. The first wheel was some pretty cool new technology. We just now take it for granted. And so what's interesting to me is that when we get into something like costume technology as we teach it can run the gamut from whale boning that people have been doing for centuries to create structure in a garment to integrating motors and wireless DMX and wireless lighting into a garment. And so technology, the fun part about USITT is that we'll dive into something that is just like cutting edge and people never intended to be used in entertainment, but we grabbed it and turned it into something. But we'll also sit down and go, here's how we painted scenery in 18th century Italy, because the shadow work, the layering of colors is just as much an important technology, even though it's 300-400 years old. And so as much as theater to us is a broad term, well, so is technology.
Coming into the future.
Yeah.
Why was the Digital Media Commission created?
Well, let's face it, digital media is, it started when, I remember we got excited in my early career if we were using slides and projecting scenery that way. And actually the first slides, the first projected scenery on Broadway goes back to the 30s.
Wow. Yeah.
Around the World in 80 Days in the 1930s was the first show on Broadway to use projected scenery in some form. Digital media now is a discrete set of knowledge and a discrete art form. It has its own terminology. It has its own aesthetic. And it has moved from being the, oh, by the way, child of these other disciplines into being its own discipline. And that's why we created a commission. Our commissions are built around disciplines of discrete knowledge. And it deserves to be on its own space as much as it coordinates as anyone does. I mean, the great beauty of being in a collaborative environment is if we work together, we can create brilliant stuff. It's a discrete knowledge to create an environment, which is even now potentially interactive with a live performer. And so it needs its own body of discussion and conversation.
The various disciplines are labeled as commissions. How many commissions are there?
We have scenic design and technology, costume design and technology, lighting design and technology, digital media, technical production, which is technical direction and the construction of things, engineering, which really sort of bridges technical production and into architecture. And they start looking at not just how do we do things, but what the braking systems within motors and things like that. We have architecture, which goes back to our founding, that really looks into how are we building the spaces in which we're performing. We have safety and health, which is its own discrete knowledge that expands across all of those disciplines together. So
yeah,
as much as it's a vertical, it's a horizontal. We talk about the plaid of the organization as things weave across each other. We have management, which looks at stage management, production management, arts administration. What are the business theories and operational theories behind this? And then we have education that looks at theater and the art forms in the educational environment. What's the pedagogy behind teaching it?
How did you find USITT? What was this journey that brought you to this role?
I started my career as a stage manager for opera companies in the US. I thought I wanted to be a high school music teacher. I was wrong. My first experience teaching music in a high school, it was not a positive one for anyone involved. I went to undergrad at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, which is halfway between Atlanta and Chattanooga. And we had a partnership with the Chattanooga Symphony and Opera and would go up there and supplement the opera chorus for their little opera company. And that's where I learned about life backstage. I knew it existed, but I'd never really watched it work. And there was this thing called a stage manager that I thought was really cool. And my voice teacher at the time sat me down one day and he went, "You don't want to be a singer?" I was like, really?
Yeah.
I said, "But there's this thing called stage managers at opera companies." He goes, "They're in other places too." But I fell in love with that and eventually pursued my career in opera stage management. And then the Atlanta Opera, I made a business case for them on how you're paying this much to employ me for 4 operas for this much more. You could have me year round, and here's what I could do for you. And they agreed. And so we relocated to Atlanta, managed to get a full-time job, and also then ended up having 2 kids, which made me evaluate life a little differently, and a position opened up at Indiana University for a production manager in the theater department. Again, I don't have a theater degree. I'd never stage managed a play. I'd run Lightboard for one as an undergrad. And I applied and they hired me. And when I got there, my department chair at the time, Leon Bronner, said, oh, and you need to be part of USITT, and they have this thing called the Stage Management Mentor Project. And because you came from opera, they'd probably like to have you as part of that. And that was my first introduction. And the SMMP.
What year was this, David?
Say what?
What year was this?
This was 2001.
Okay.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The SMMP is a project that USITT still does. It's over 30 years old now. We bring young stage managers to our annual conference, pair them with a professional, and those young stage managers do the main event management of the events at the annual conference. And the mentors are designed to come and show young stage managers the breadth of career opportunities you can have in stage management. So I came from opera. My friend Jack had just come off of stage managing the Super Bowl halftime show for Disney. We brought people from Cirque, from new little tiny theaters, giant theaters, but the whole point was to really help them build a network.
Networking. That is what USITT is all about. Networking, creating bonds, relationships, and through those relationships creates opportunities. Okay.
Correct.
2020.
2020, we were supposed to be in Houston.
In Houston, that's right. That was the first conference that I was supposed to attend and speak, and it was canceled due to COVID. From your position with USITT, what were you feeling from the industry, and what were you feeling from the students, the different faculty members that are part of the organization, the people who are working out in the field? What were you feeling from your position about COVID and the shutdown?
I keep a daily journal for a variety of reasons, and it's kind of fun to go back and see what your thoughts were. And I had written things like, oh my, this could last 6 or 8 weeks. Like, oh, well, you're so sweet and cute and naive. And what I quickly learned was everything was falling down around us and no one knew what to do. We were shutting down our 60th annual meeting. Our theaters were shutting down. Our schools were shutting down. Our society was shutting down. And I went to our board and said, we can't. We got our group of people together, and we had 20 days. And I said, okay, April 6th, which would have been the Monday after the conference was supposed to have closed, we're going to start doing online classes. And several people rightly said, we've never done that. We don't know how to do that. I was like, well, we have until April 6th to figure that out. Now, don't we?
Yeah.
In doing that, we felt like we could help people along through things. And we did. And so more than ever in that time, I realized the value of that network. And when you're in a moment of distress, I mean, I grew up in the South. If somebody's in a moment of distress, you make them food and you take it to them. I can't take food to 125,000 people, though my grandmother would have tried. But what we could do is take the food of knowledge and training, and even just the opportunity to get together.
Mhm.
You know, we had a young woman who sent us a note. She said, "Thank you so much. I did all of my online classes with my grandmother, and she didn't know what it was I did. She thought it was so fun to learn so much more about lighting." And I thought, okay, that's really cool. We bonded somebody with another generation in their family, because we've all been the misfits in the family
Mm.
that nobody knew what it was we did. And they were all sure we were going to live in their basement.
Yeah.
And instead we were able to bring that together. And I think that was the beginning of an incredibly shining moment for the Institute, to create an environment where people could come together at a time they needed it the most. Ironically, at the 2020 annual conference, USITT was ready to launch a workforce demographic survey, goals of creating a more diverse workplace. But nobody could tell you what our workplace looked like. I mean, we all kind of knew what it looked like. It looked like middle-aged white men with ponytails. But nobody had any data. And so the board at USITT agreed that we would invest in doing this survey, which we then promptly shelved because it's kind of tone deaf to do a workforce development survey when your entire industry just shut down. But we brought it back in 2021 because it is important to us. The goal is to do it every 5 years to see, are we making a shift? And we as an institute are working to make a shift to make sure that we can help make a difference, because what that survey told us is we were not as clear on how middle-aged white guy our industry was.
What is the goal and the process that USITT is taking to make the registration and the attendance for the Baltimore conference more diverse?
Our goal has been as many hands-on learning opportunities as we can put together in Baltimore. We have 100,000 square feet of space dedicated to hands-on learning labs at all levels. Yeah. So that there's entry level. And remember, every one of us in this industry is an entry level person at something. I am perfectly competent at some pieces of technology, and you put me in front of a sewing machine and you may as well have just asked me to build a 747. But there's the goal is to have something for everyone to be able to get their hands dirty and learn by doing. We're doing quite a bit of work with Baltimore and Baltimore City to reach out to the arts community in Baltimore and show them that there's a resource and a place for them. Our biggest theaters, our smallest theaters, the oldest continually producing African-American theater in America is in Baltimore. So how are we reaching out? And we are reaching out to make connections with them and make the invitations to be able to get them in and get them connecting as part of the network.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. We have an exhibit that will be this year dedicated to the emerging creative designers who are currently in or just recently graduated from the historically Black colleges and universities in the United States. You know, our HBCUs, many of them have theater programs, but like the entirety, with the exception of a few of them, most of our HBCUs have real funding struggles. And if you think the arts are underfunded at a well-funded university, try underfunding the arts at an underfunded university.
Yes.
And yet, sometimes that's where we can find our most creative solutions. Because, you know, when you can throw money at something, that's one thing, but we see great theater all over America.
Mm-hmm.
done in garages
With pool noodles.
with pool noodles. You can cover that pool noodle, baby. It'll you get some structure, you get some legs.
You know, as I go out and travel for all these different jobs and trying to build those relationships with the universities and talk to the different students and the professors and try to share that knowledge and understanding, right? It's like, if I had the opportunity to travel the country with work, why not on my travel day, try to find a local institution to be able to just give back and to just share some knowledge with those up and coming students and individuals, and just share from a different perspective, you know? And I look at what USITT is doing with was it the EDTA program?
Yeah, Educational Theater Association.
Yeah. And then reaching out to, what are we looking at here? 171 schools across 39 states and Taiwan. Like that is huge.
Where we were missing the boat was at the high school level.
Mm-hmm.
And a group of the folks engaged in ESETT went through and started looking at the skill set, because ESETT was really built for the person exiting college. As we were working on that, the state of California came to us and said, we see you have this. Do you have something for high school students? We said, funny you should ask. This rolls around California, talks to people in New Jersey, talk to people in Texas. And before we know it, we have a national coalition of people who are working with us to create an exam that meets standards for career and technical education. Federal funding exists through the Department of Labor for teaching students programs that are defined as CTE. If you are of my generation, your generation, we called it SHOP and home ec.
Yep.
It's all CTE now.
Which kind of was like right around driver's ed. Like
right. It was on that part of the school. They taught it down there. CTE now engages, computer science, engineering, all of these different fields. And theater technology is part of that. And the exam includes basic theater terms, basic health and safety, some not so basic health and safety, electrics, basic scenery, costumes, and it pulls from the various buckets, because some schools have strengths in one place and some schools have strengths in another. And we want to make it so that a student can pass the exam, but also be able to look at it and go, you passed, but here's your deficiencies.
I started taking television production classes in middle school. Went to a special high school in Miami, Florida, William H. Turner Technical Arts High School. And 2 out of my 6 classes were television production classes. From there, I went to Florida State University, applied for the film school, did not get into the film school, but was still in pursuit of that communications degree. I've worked on the Bobby Bowden show. I've worked on the Mike Martin show, all of the sports, all of the college sports. Every single Florida State home game, I was underneath that scoreboard shooting the games while all of my peers were in the stands watching. After my time at Florida State, I got an internship with the Orlando Magic and was with that organization as an independent contractor for 15 seasons. I was the only Black male on that crew, like the main crew member, the only one, right?
Yeah.
But what I appreciated, one of the things I appreciated so much, but one of the things I appreciated about my time there, I was camera 3, right? That became part of my identity. I sat on that wood floor underneath that basket, that camera on my shoulder, shooting those games for the broadcast. And what I was able to do for a lot of my friends and a lot of my peers and the people that I met, they would see the game, watch the game, and they would see me run out on the court during the halftime, during the timeouts, all of that. That was exposure for people who knew me and saw me, to be able to comprehend and understand, oh, wow, I'm able to see this game through the television because of people like Clem, who has that camera on their shoulder. USITT as an organization, as a whole, is making that difference for people to learn, to be better, to grow, to provide opportunities, education, and to find that uniqueness, that special gift that lies inside of them, and be able to express that outwardly.
It takes people like you or other people within USITT who are willing to go and visit those schools, because if we can find that one kid,
yeah,
making a difference. Making a difference is making a difference one person at a time. It's actually a very labor-intensive purpose.
Which then becomes generational difference.
Correct. Raising up that person that you might not have looked at if somebody hadn't said, hey, I ran into this young person. They're working their tail off at a church, wanting to be the audio-visual person.
Yeah.
And I think they've got the potential for a career in this.
Yeah. Conversations like this, conversations that will continue to be had, and actions that will be taken even through the conference in Baltimore. You know, it's beautiful, and I applaud you and the organization as a whole. One of the things I want to touch on lastly is just the transition from all of the educational side of things into the job, into the workforce. You know, I noticed that on the website, there's also information around jobs that are available in the industry, and trying to connect people with those said jobs. And what other ways is USITT helping to bridge those relationships overall?
We have relationships with partner organizations like IAVM, the venue managers. They often deal more with stadiums and arenas, but they need technicians, and they need people who understand what we do. So how do we point you in other places? You know, I think it's Miracle on 34th Street where Santa Claus is listening to the kid, and the kid wants this gift from the parents, and Santa says, well, they don't sell that here, they sell that over there. I believe that's one of the roles of a good citizen, is we aren't going to ever have all the services for someone, but I need to be able to point you in the direction to make you aware of that.
All of that being said, David, I appreciate the work that you've done and the work that you've put in with your board and everybody else involved, and really looking forward to finally meeting in person.
I think to the number of friends and colleagues I have through the industry and through the association, and the more we can open those doors and see people who represent the breadth of America, the better we will be in every term.
Amen. Amen. David, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
Love back to you, brother. Take care.
All right. Chatter.